faithfully sharing value, exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Club. Today we're diving into Carnegie's autobiography. The author is Andrew Carnegie, the American steel magnate, who penned this memoir when he was nearly 80. Back then, World War I had just erupted, and Carnegie's pal John Deck was invited to edit the book. In his foreword, he wrote, "Even the Arabian Nights can't top the bizarre tale of this poor Scottish lad." Some might ask, isn't he the American steel tycoon? Then why call him a Scottish boy? Actually, Carnegie wasn't born in the US. He came into this world on November 25th, 1835, in a small Scottish town, Dunfermline, which was a famous textile hub where nearly every family ran tiny hand-weaving workshops. Carnegie's dad was in the same trade, but as mechanized factories took over, the small shops struggled and the family fell on hard times. In May 1848, Carnegie's folks moved to America with him and his brother to join relatives. In the States, Carnegie started as a child worker at 13, earning just $1.20 a week. Then in 1901, at 65, he sold his steel firm to Morgan and scored a massive $480 million fortune. Wow, such an amazing rags to riches story. How on earth did he pull it off? Next up, I'll break Carnegie's life journey into 4 phases. Phase 1 covers his teen years as a working boy. Phase 2 details his career at the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. Phase 3 traces his rise as a steel magnate through entrepreneurship. Phase 4 focuses on his full-time philanthropy after selling the steel business. To paint a truer picture of Carnegie's epic life, I'll draw from David Nassau's biography and documentaries on the AETN History Channel. First, let's dive into Phase 1. The Carnegies headed to Pittsburgh in southwestern Pennsylvania, arriving nearly broke. Oh, when they were about to depart, even after selling the family's handloom, Dad couldn't scrape together enough for their boat tickets. In the end, the immigration plan only worked thanks to borrowing 20 pounds. Oh. Once in Pittsburgh, they stayed at Carnegie's aunt's place. The biggest perk was no rent, saving them a bundle of money. Back in Scotland, Carnegie had attended school for a few years, but after moving to Pittsburgh, the family couldn't afford to keep him in education. His mother, Margaret, made shoes to help with household expenses, and his little brother was just 5 years old. At 13, Carnegie had to go out with his dad to earn money and support the family. At that time in Pittsburgh, there was a group of successful Scots who were eager to help newcomers from their homeland. Several of Carnegie's bosses were Scotsmen, and they all looked out for him. Carnegie first worked winding bobbins at the cotton mill where his father was employed, putting in 12 hours a day. Later, he switched to another factory, operating a steam engine in the basement. Whoa. Then the boss noticed Carnegie had neat handwriting and was good at math, so he got transferred to write posters and handle simple accounts. At this point, Carnegie set a goal for himself: to become a bookkeeper. To achieve this, he attended night school with coworkers to learn double-entry bookkeeping. Carnegie described those days as grueling. He often drew inspiration from stories of Scottish heroes Wallace and Bruce to keep going, preferring death over surrender. In 1850, through his uncle's recommendation, Carnegie became a telegraph messenger at a local office. Carnegie called this job the true first step in his life journey. He finally escaped that gloomy basement and got a chance to learn new things. It was as if Carnegie saw a ladder to climb upward, and he poured all his effort into ascending. Carnegie worked as a messenger for a year, and his performance outshone the other young messengers. One day a year later, the supervisor gave Carnegie an extra $2.25 during payday, his first ever raise, when his monthly salary was $11.15. When he handed the money to his mother, her eyes welled up with tears. Keep in mind, his mother earned only about $4 a month making shoes for others. And his father had long since quit the factory job, returning to weaving cloth at home and hawking it around, with highly unstable income. So, at 16, Carnegie had become the family's main breadwinner. During his messenger days, what thrilled Carnegie most was visiting Colonel Anderson's local library to read. This library offered free access to child laborers and housed over 400 volumes. To Carnegie, it was a treasure trove of knowledge that immensely enriched him. When Carnegie achieved success, his first act was erecting a monument for this benefactor and donating a local library.
But Carnegie wasn't satisfied just being a messenger. He set a new goal, becoming a telegraph operator.
Remarkably, the telegraph office's director, Mr. Reed, was not only Scottish, but also born in Dunfermline like Carnegie. Recognizing talent in this Scottish lad, he gave his approval. Carnegie learned manual telegraphy and quickly mastered sending and receiving messages.
At 17, he was promoted to full telegraph operator with a $25 monthly salary, enough to fully support his family.
As an operator, Carnegie had a special skill, word guessing. Due to technical limits, stormy weather weakened signals, causing missing letters and words. This meant some content required educated guessing. Carnegie's Scottish upbringing gave him familiarity with British or European contexts, and he deliberately followed current affairs to improve guessing accuracy. Soon, he could deduce entire words from just the first letter or two. Before long, his supervisor assigned him exclusively to handle overseas telegrams and the life-changing mentor who shaped Carnegie's destiny. Thomas Scott was about to enter the picture. In 1852, 29-year-old Scott was Pennsylvania Railroad's Pittsburgh agent from a British immigrant family with Scottish-Irish roots. Essentially, Carnegie's half-countrymen they met when Scott visited to send telegrams. Scott spotted this capable young man and brought him under his wing. Carnegie finally got his chance to shine, rocketing towards success from that moment. That concludes Phase 1. Although Carnegie's youth was grueling, each job change marked a significant step upward. Carnegie showed remarkable resilience and optimism, constantly setting new goals and brimming with hope for the future. Now let's move into Phase 2, Carnegie's career journey at the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. From 18 to 30, Carnegie worked at Pennsylvania Railroad under Scott's strong mentorship. This period marked his meteoric rise and laid financial and networking foundations for his entrepreneurship. On February 1st, 1853, Carnegie joined as Scott's telegrapher, also serving as his secretary and chief assistant. Young Carnegie saw Scott as his idol, but one incident made Scott value him exceptionally. Technically, Carnegie overstepped his authority, but he actually bailed Scott out.
A railroad section accident had trains stranded in both directions.
Protocol required Scott himself to issue movement orders, but Scott was unexpectedly late that day, while Carnegie often drafted orders for him, so he knew train scheduling inside out. He sent telegrams in Scott's name, clearing stranded trains overnight, all resolved by Scott's arrival. This gamble risked Carnegie's job, even criminal charges, if he'd messed up. Had he done nothing, Scott would have faced company discipline. Scott deeply appreciated Carnegie's move. From then on, Scott treated him as a protege and trusted confidant. Scott not only raised Carnegie's pay, but promoted him to executive roles after his own promotions. In 1856, Scott became divisional superintendent, relocating to Altoona, about 150 miles east of Pittsburgh. He brought Carnegie along as his assistant. The year after moving to Altoona, Carnegie had a fateful train encounter. While traveling by train, Carnegie sat in the last row of the rear car when a farmer-looking man approached, carrying a green bag. His name was Woodruff. He learned Carnegie worked for Pennsylvania Railroad and wanted him to evaluate his invented sleeping car model.
Carnegie instantly realized this could solve overnight travel comfort for railroad passengers.
He immediately reported it to Scott. After the sleeping car deal was struck, Woodruff invited Carnegie to invest, offering him 8% dividends. This was likely Woodruff's way of thanking Carnegie. Woodruff probably approached Carnegie knowing he was Scott's favorite who could make the project happen. Carnegie said this venture earned him his first significant money.
Records suggest he made about $5,000, while his monthly salary was just $65.
So from that point, Carnegie became modestly wealthy. After 3 years in Altona, Mr. Scott got promoted again. He became vice president at headquarters based in Philadelphia. This time, Scott didn't take Carnegie to Philly but gave him a better role: Pittsburgh Division Superintendent. Boo! The position paid an annual salary of $1,500. In 1860, Carnegie returned to Pittsburgh for his first independent leadership role. After 6+ years learning management from Scott, he was ready. Now was his moment to shine, and he performed remarkably well.
That winter was brutally cold, with frequent accidents. As superintendent, Carnegie once worked 8 straight days and nights clearing blockages.
Exhausted, he'd collapse asleep anywhere, even filthy spots, for half-hour stretches before resuming work. About a year later, the Civil War erupted, and Scott became Assistant Secretary of War. He summoned Carnegie to Washington as his assistant again. In Washington, Carnegie met President Lincoln and other officials. Okay, that concludes Phase 2. Carnegie faced a major family tragedy during this phase. Before turning 20, his father died from illness, leaving debts from medical bills. Carnegie alone shouldered the family burden. According to Carnegie's granddaughter in a documentary, after his father's death, he promised his mother he wouldn't marry during her lifetime. He vowed to earn money to buy his mother a carriage and give her a noblewoman's luxurious life. Carnegie fulfilled every one of these promises later. This shows Carnegie was a man of great responsibility. Now let's move to Phase 3, Carnegie's entrepreneurial journey. Let's see how Carnegie became the Steel King. In 1862, Lincoln enacted the Homestead Act. Under this law, any U.S. citizen over 21 could get 160 Western acres, about 970 Chinese mu, for a $10 fee. After living and farming there 5 years, they'd own it. This act further propelled America's westward expansion. As populations moved west, railroads followed, revealing boundless entrepreneurial potential to Carnegie. Carnegie launched his ventures that year while still at Pennsylvania Railroad, only quitting 3 years later when his business stabilized. A key feature of Carnegie's entrepreneurship, every company he founded was deeply tied to railroads. His railroad connections and resources were crucial to his success. For example, during the Civil War, Carnegie noticed railroads faced a severe rail shortage crisis.
So in 1864, he founded a rail production plant.
With high locomotive demand, Carnegie co-founded an engine factory in 1866. Business boomed, but his 1862 bridge company stood out with his former boss Scott as investor. When wartime fires destroyed wooden rail bridges, Carnegie seized the iron bridge opportunity. Many bridge contracts came from Pennsylvania Railroad, largely thanks to Scott. Their relationship seemed solid until 1871, when Scott sold all their Union Pacific shares while Carnegie was in London without consulting him. Carnegie said this was his first conflict with his beloved former boss who had greatly influenced him. After the falling out with his dear ex-boss, during the 1873 U.S. financial crisis, Scott faced huge trouble building a railroad. He couldn't repay a massive Morgan Bank loan.
He asked Carnegie for help.
Morgan Bank stated they'd renew Scott's loan if Carnegie guaranteed it. But Carnegie refused, claiming it was life's toughest moment. He didn't want involvement. However, David Nassau's biography suggests Carnegie himself decided to sell the stocks, unrelated to Scott. So why did Carnegie and Scott become enemies? Nassau writes that early biographies rumored Carnegie had a crush on Miss Liddell, daughter of the Pittsburgh Gazette publisher, who became Scott's second wife. If true, Carnegie's refusal to help Scott in crisis becomes understandable. Scott died in 1881 at 57, ending their feud. Carnegie's bridge company likely wasn't profitable. He shut it down after years, but construction continued over a decade due to long-term contracts. Carnegie took bridge quality very seriously. Back then, many bridges collapsed under trains, causing disasters. But Carnegie's bridges were rock solid because he used top-notch materials. To control material quality, he founded his own steel mill. After closing the bridge company, his steel mill thrived and became his true fortune maker. Carnegie's first steel mill was fairly small. Before quitting the railroad, he'd started two factories. His brother Tom worked alongside him, serving as his right-hand man. In 1867, he merged them to create Union Iron Mills. Back then, Carnegie was still learning the ropes of the steel industry. As an industry outsider, he managed to establish himself firmly. There were three key reasons. First, rigorous cost management. Carnegie believed manufacturing must strictly control every expense to turn a profit. Back then, Pittsburgh had several steel mills with no expense tracking systems. Owners were clueless about daily spending, only discovering profit or loss at year-end. But Carnegie enforced strict expense tracking, always knowing each department's operations. Where was every penny spent? Which production stage had waste? How could they save?
Carnegie said manufacturing success required sophisticated accounting systems with strict enforcement.
Everyone should guard factory funds and materials like their own home. Bosses couldn't focus only on office costs while ignoring workshop waste. Thanks to department-wide implementation of his cost controls, Carnegie's mill grew from small to industry leader. Carnegie's second winning strategy: heavy investment in advanced equipment. He believed equipment investments, though costly, delivered long-term returns. Every UK trip included steel plant visits to study new technology. Siemens furnaces were used in UK mills but were pricey. Some Pittsburgh mills skipped them due to cost. Learning these furnaces halved fuel consumption. Carnegie immediately imported them. Later accounting proved they'd have been worth it at twice the price. Carnegie's third winning move: hiring chemists at premium salaries. In the 1860s, ironmakers didn't grasp chemists' importance. Carnegie pioneered hiring them, seen as wasteful, but it paid off massively. Back then, expensive ores often failed to produce top-grade steel. Chemists revealed those ores had 10 to 20% less iron than thought, while cheap low-grade ores were actually superior. Based on this analysis, Carnegie's factory switched ore sources, saving a fortune on material costs. Initially, Carnegie dabbled in Western Railroad projects alongside steel, but eventually pulled out completely. He believed in putting all good eggs in one basket and watching that basket closely, so he focused solely on steel. Before the Civil War, all American steel and most iron came mainly from Britain. So then, in 1870, the U.S. government slapped a 28% tariff on imported steel rails, creating a protective shield for domestic producers. This national strategy shift turbocharged Carnegie's steel empire. Carnegie had bought two British rail patents, but both failed during U.S. production trials. Mass-producing steel was still a huge challenge back then. The Carnegie kept close tabs on British developments, especially the Bessemer steelmaking process. He knew full well this method would usher in the true steel age once perfected. The technology enabled furnaces to produce steel non-stop, 24/7. When the process succeeded, Carnegie immediately bought the patent and co-founded a new rail company. Founded in 1873 during a financial crisis, the company halted operations. Some shareholders sold stakes to Carnegie when dividends dried up. Thus, Carnegie, not originally a major shareholder, gained control. When operations resumed, Carnegie established nationwide agents and won orders with unbeatable prices. His first order came from Pennsylvania Railroad. Then he pitched to other railroads. His letters opened with, "We just secured a 5,000-ton rail order from Pennsylvania Railroad. Proof enough for you to try our rails." Price competitiveness was key too, thanks to Carnegie's strict cost controls. Notably, the rail company was named after Pennsylvania Railroad's president, Thompson. Carnegie claimed in his autobiography this honored Thompson, but it also revealed his cunning. Naming the rail company after Thompson killed two birds with one stone. Thompson would be thrilled, securing Pennsylvania Railroad orders. Other railroads seeing the name would recognize Carnegie's connection, building trust in the company's strength. Great for sales. In 1879, Carnegie's company made $500,000 profit. By 1882, it hit $2 million plus. When rail prices dropped in 1883, he diversified operations. Steel demand in construction doubled. Over the next 7 years, output surged as he acquired 6 Pittsburgh area steel plants. In 1890, he renamed it Carnegie Steel Company. By 1901, Carnegie Steel became the world's largest with 20,000 plus employees, output surpassing Britain's total, earning 40 million annual profit. Carnegie was now truly the steel king. He recruited top talent, offering generous pay. Their dedication made the mills thrive. Jones Edgar Thompson, Steel's production director, rose from a $2 per day mechanic. Carnegie offered him shares, but Jones declined to avoid administrative duties. So Carnegie said, "Then you'll get a salary matching the U.S. president." President Grant's $50,000 salary was extraordinary then, showing Carnegie's value for talent. Under Jones's leadership, Edgar Thomson Steel achieved remarkable success. Carnegie once declared, "Burn my plants and materials, but save my team and I'll rebuild the empire." Behind Carnegie's success lay a dark chapter he dedicated in Autobiography Section 2, the Homestead Strike. In July 1892, 3,000 workers struck Carnegie's Homestead plant over longer hours and pay cuts. The factory manager Frick hired 300 Pinkerton detectives to suppress the strike with guns, leading to a violent clash. Records show about 10 workers died and several hundred more were injured.
Carnegie claimed he was traveling in Scotland unaware of it, saying it caused him deep pain.
But David Nassau's biography of Andrew Carnegie tells a different story. According to Nassau, Carnegie and Frick maintained constant telegraph and letter contact.
Just a day before the tragedy, Frick sent a lengthy telegram updating Carnegie on the situation.
Carnegie knew about hiring the detectives and didn't oppose the bloody strike suppression. This became a stain on Carnegie's life. He made excuses later, but it couldn't be fully whitewashed. In 1901, at 65, Carnegie sold his steel company to a banker for a flat $480 million. Morgan, the deal wrapped up swiftly with no haggling from either side. Carnegie no longer wanted to chase wealth at this point. He believed a nobler and tougher cause existed: philanthropy. He dedicated his remaining life to charity work. All right, that wraps up Phase 3. Carnegie's success came from seizing steel opportunities, focused dedication, scientific financial management, and valuing tech and talent. Orders from Scott and Thompson also ensured steady company growth. Now, let's dive into Phase 4, covering Carnegie's charity focus after selling the company. Actually, he'd already started various donations before selling the company.
After selling, he founded the Carnegie Foundation as president, personally handling many tasks.
He thought it shameful for the rich to die with huge fortunes. And
Before death, he donated over $350 million, worth billions today, making him a pioneer of giving while living.
David Nassau's biography mentions Carnegie had his wife Louise sign a prenuptial agreement before marriage, under the condition of receiving $20,000 annually. Louise waived her inheritance rights to her husband's property. This agreement was signed in April 1887. Prenups were rare then. When Carnegie died, he left almost nothing to his only daughter. What was his reasoning? Carnegie believed the wealthy had 3 ways to handle surplus wealth: pass it to family, donate posthumously to public causes, or manage it properly during their lifetime. He considered the first option worst, harmful to descendants and nation, breeding ungrateful heirs. Better to leave family honor than wealth. The second often misused wealth against donors' intentions, making lifetime management preferable. Hence the third way. Wealth owners should distribute assets during life to benefit the public as they choose. For ideal donation areas, Carnegie prioritized universities, free libraries, medical institutions, public facilities, and churches. Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh was his creation. Founded in 1900 by Andrew Carnegie, it's now a top-ranked U.S. university. Carnegie also invested massively in libraries. Records show he funded 2,509 libraries total. Most were in the US, UK, and Canada. That concludes his charity phase. Carnegie's giving while living made him a model for future tycoons. Personally, as his business thrived, Carnegie worked less. In 1867, he moved to New York with his mother. At 32, he semi-retired, socializing with business and cultural elites, like his close friend, Mark Twain. 1886 was Carnegie's darkest period. His brother and mother died in quick succession, and he fell seriously ill. But the next year, Carnegie turned a new page. In April 1887, 51-year-old Carnegie married 29-year-old Louise Whitfield. In March 1897, their daughter was born. Carnegie was nearly 62 then, and they named her Margaret to honor his mother. In April 1919, on his 32nd wedding anniversary, his only daughter got married. It's said this was his last public appearance. That same year, on August 11th, Carnegie passed away in America. Thus concluded his extraordinary life. Beyond being an entrepreneur and philanthropist, Carnegie was also an author and orator. His book, The Gospel of Wealth, shared his business success principles.
In it, Carnegie offered young people valuable advice. Start at the bottom, even scrubbing offices daily isn't bad.
After a solid start, aim high, set your sights on the top position. Carnegie preached this and practiced it himself. This Scottish boy, a first-gen immigrant, arrived rootless and poor. Starting as a 13-year-old factory worker, his beginnings were rock bottom. Yet decades later, he rose as the American Steel King, a solo entrepreneurial legend. Forbes magazine once ranked America's 15 wealthiest historical figures. Carnegie placed second, just below oil tycoon Rockefeller, far above Gates or Buffett. Most would see his childhood poverty as a losing start, but he disagreed. He said his mother served as nurse, cook, and tutor, his father as role model, guide, and friend. Compared to what he and his brother gained, wealthy kids' inheritances paled. 2. Many like Carnegie succeeded from poverty, sharing similar work experiences. Carnegie called poverty their strictest, most effective school. Hardship ignited their innate resilience. Carnegie deeply admired two lines by British poet William Ernest Henley. "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Driven by this self-motivation, he defined the wealthy's responsibility through his legendary life, bringing wisdom, experience, and wealth management skills to serve his fellow citizens wholeheartedly. That wraps up Carnegie's autobiography. Find reading notes below the audio. See you next time.